So my number 2 game is going to be...
Is this like when you open up the envelope at the awards ceremony and you read the wrong
Yeah, exactly.
game?
That never happened before.
That doesn't sound right. Let me change that. It goes to Will Smith instead. My number 2 game is Rule the Waves 2.
Okay.
Huh.
I had a feeling that was coming.
Yeah, I'm not going to give it my number 1, which is where I had it, but thinking about it more, I think the other game I have is more deserving. I have to be honest, I'm not even sure where... I didn't have a list of games in front of me. I didn't look through every game that became available in 2019. So that's part of my dilemma is I just thought about my year and I thought about what did I play a lot of.
You just need to repeat 2019 again, man. Just, go back in time.
I wish. If only I could redo it. No, I mean, and I played A Legionary's Life a lot, so it's funny that I didn't even think about that one, but I don't think it would have made my top 3 had I forgotten about Field of Glory Empires. I should have put that one in number 3 instead, but it's a great game. Anyways, Rule the Waves 2... The reason why it's not number 1, I think Rule the Waves is just a very underrated and underrepresented, not well known enough, underpopular. What's the word I'm looking for here? Not enough people know about it.
Underappreciated.
Yeah, but it's just not even popular. People just don't even know what the game is, and I feel like that's been true since the beginning, and maybe at some point they're going to end up where they should, but I think they're still a little bit too unknown compared to how many people I think would really enjoy this game. I think there's still a large population of people out there who don't know about Rule the Waves who would really like it. And Rule the Waves 2, the reason why it's not my number 1 is because it's basically Rule the Waves 1 extended. There is a huge mechanical difference between 1 and 2 in that there's carriers, there's airplanes. This changes everything. And we know, right? This is how the era of the battleship came to a close, is because of aircraft. So adding all that in is intense. But when you're playing a game and it's the same interface, it's the same battle setup, everything's the same except for it goes longer and new mechanics become available halfway through the game. I mean, by the way, halfway through the game, that's where the old game used to end. Like my old series on Rule the Waves, they used to take, let's say, 50 hours to complete. The new ones will now take 100 hours to complete because the new game is the old one.
Twice as good.
I wouldn't say twice as good, but it's the old one just plus some stuff at the end where carriers go in. And they have like a mechanic, like a missing shell where missiles are supposed to go. They're supposed to get rocket combat involved. I think they're supposed to have rocket-guided launches from destroyers, stuff like that. But
I can't imagine how that'll work in that game.
I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense. I think that they don't know exactly how it'll work, and it may never even come to fruition. But I love Rule the Waves. It's like how I became even well known on YouTube, just because I did so much Rule the Waves. So that's my game, and there's no way I can not pick Rule the Waves 2 in my top 3.
That's fair, and we did an interview on the show with the developer of the game as well, and that was a lot of fun. I really like Rule the Waves 2. I will admit that when it first came out, I think I was a little bit disappointed that there wasn't enough. The experience didn't feel new enough to me. And I think part of the problem is I always wanted to play from the 1900 start date because I'm a little bit of a completionist, and I don't like the idea of starting the game halfway through the game. I certainly don't like the idea of starting with like legacy battleships or like building a perfect battle fleet in 1925 or 20 or whatever the start date is. So I think I was a little underwhelmed and disappointed with the game, but what I will say is when we did play it a lot for that collaboration series between you, myself, XTRG, and Benjamin Magnus, when I really started, that was the first time I think I really gave the game a fair shake. It wasn't the first time I played it, but it was the first time I really gave it its due. And when we started doing that, man, I remembered every reason that I fell in love with Rule the Waves 1. And Rule the Waves 2 is a really good game. And, it kind of completely makes the purpose of Rule the Waves 1 null and void. There's no reason to go back and ever buy that. But Rule the Waves 2 is excellent, and I agree with you. I've really enjoyed my time with it after a little bit of a delayed appreciation for it.
Yeah, it's one of those, I think, that it has a learning curve. It's not one of those that was easy to get into.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I feel like that's probably what keeps a lot of people from, trying it out is the learning curve. Because I know when I tried it out, I spent some time trying to like get used to the mechanics and how it worked, and it took longer than a traditional strategy game. So, like for me, like I play John Tiller games. I really like John Tiller games. And those, I'm not going to say like a full grognard, but they're very close, right? There's a lot of stuff in John Tiller games. And I find that even learning a John Tiller game was easier than learning Rule the Waves. There's so many mechanics in there and so many things you got to understand and get into, and then a lot of things you got to need to understand about naval warfare, which is something that I'm interested in, but not especially not pre World War II. Like my interest in naval warfare starts around World War II. Anything before then is like okay, but I really gain interest with naval warfare around, the aircraft carrier, the, Yamato battleship, the Fletcher class destroyers, things around that generation, and then up to modern day. Probably because, my first ship that I ever saw in my life was the Intrepid, which is an SX class carrier. And if you're in New York or traveling to New York, it is, I think, next to 42nd Street. So if you want to see a fucking amazing naval ship, that's where you go. And you can play Rule the Waves on the Intrepid if you bring a laptop. So there.
I think the one of the most appealing parts of Rule the Waves, though, is this whole arms race. That's where the game concept comes from.
Well, I mean, I think you're completely right, and I think the fact that, and I don't mean this in a negative way, because I think Ultimate Admiral is going to bring a lot more exposure to the same game concept because of some of their game design choices, but I think the amount of excitement and enthusiasm you see out there for Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts is indicative of the fact that people love the idea of building their own ships and then fighting them, and this arms race concept, which is also going to be built into that game as well.
Well, I can't wait for Rule the Waves 3, where they challenge Ultimate Admiral. It's going to be interesting how that works out.
I don't think they'll ever challenge them from a visual perspective. I mean, you're comparing a full-blown dev studio to a couple of, literally like two or three guys. One guy doing all the programming. So yeah. I doubt that'll happen. But that's fine. There's different strokes for different folks, as they like to say.
That's right.
With that being said, I think it's my turn to jump into my number 2 game of 2019. And I went back and forth on this a little bit, but I think my number 2 game on this list is going to be Unity of Command 2, which is a sequel, obviously, to Unity of Command 1. It is a turn-based strategy and war game that allows you to play through the Western campaigns of World War II, so 1943, starting in North Africa at the end of the North African campaign, into the invasion of Sicily, Italy, and then eventually the liberation of Europe. And it's a game that I struggled a little bit to kind of understand how all the mechanics work. It's a weird game to me because it's super approachable. Like, you can literally just jump in and play. It is a brilliant mix of sort of beer and pretzels, but also deep strategy and deep sort of wargaming mechanics. So I think in many ways it's the perfect, or one of the better, entry-level war games out there. But there were some things in the game and the user interface that seemed a little bit hidden, a little bit not clear. None of it prevented me from playing through the whole campaign pretty effectively and winning through the campaign. But there were some things in there that I thought could have been done a little bit better. But on the whole, I think it's a really good game. It has some elements of like the Panzer General kind of a mechanic where you have units that gain experience over time, and then you carry those units through the entire campaign, and you can kind of build a shared history, a shared memory with those units, so that that isn't just an armored unit. That is the armored unit that won the battle of Anzio for you, or whatever it may be. So I think it's a really well done game, and I think the unique thing of the game is that it does supply in a way that I don't think any of these other sort of turn-based strategy games do it, where you have these supply depots that you need to build up or shrink. You need to allocate where you want your supply depots to be located based on the type of terrain the depots are on. They have different amounts of range, and if your troops end up out of supply, they will very rapidly die. And overall, I think it's a game that's a lot of fun. I spent a lot of time playing it, and I really enjoyed it, and it's definitely the number 2 game on my top 3 games of 2019.
I mean, it made a lot of awards. I mean, 91%. Everybody, Wargamer, highly recommended 5 out of 5 by Strategy Gamer. Not to be confused with the Strategy Wargamer.
I mean, I think if you will if you look at Unity of Command 1, which obviously was the first game in the series, and you know, if you look back to the press around that game, it was amazingly positive, and to this day, I still hear many people refer to that as the best sort of entry-level war game that's ever been made. Unity of Command 2 took a lot of what they did for that game and builds on it. I haven't played the original game, so I'm not as versed in Unity of Command 1. That was a game that looked at the Eastern Front as opposed to the Western Front. But overall, I mean, the whole series has been very well regarded by mainstream outlets, by wargaming outlets, by all of the, whoever you name it, they probably have a positive opinion of Unity of Command as a series.
I have more comments about Unity of Command 2, but I think I'd like to kind of come back to this one after I reveal my number 1 game. So.
Oh my God, we know his number 1 game!
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed playing this game. This was a really fun game. I had a great time playing it. So, yeah, I could definitely see why everybody gave it top marks. I was considering it for my top 3, but, I chose my top 3 on the games that I always play and the games that are always on my mind all the time. And this was very close to number 3, but did not make the list. Maybe Unity Command 3, but we'll see. All right, so I guess
because it's not on iPad.
Oh man, if it made an iPad, it would definitely turn my head. That's for sure. Or iPhone, so I could play while I'm at work, so nobody can, be like, freaking walk by my desk and be like, What are you up to?" I was like, "I'm just doing, I'm just checking Slack right here. Don't worry about it. Keep your eyes away," kind of thing.
I will say I disagree with this one thing. When I Googled Unity of Command, there's a section on Google that says games like Unity of Command. And so it's got Unity of Command 2, which makes sense. It's got Panzer Corps 2, Panzer General, which, yeah, okay, I can see a little bit of that. But then it also has Command Modern Air Naval Operations. Which is not even the faintest similar. But anyway, Sean, what's your number 2 game of 2019?
My number 2 is a game that I was looking forward to all year. It was a game that kind of made me wow when I first opened it up, and still, every time I catch the dev blogs or the new patches they come out with, and you can see I'm kind of procrastinating mentioning what it is Imperator Rome. Yes. So I know you guys had some things to say about, and it was kind of like we actually had an episode devoted to Imperator Rome, and we were kind of going back and forth for like 2 hours on this game. And I know I was in the very positive, lot over there while you guys were in the middle or toward the other end. But the reason I love this game and hit my number 2 was, like I was mentioning, it made me say wow the moment I opened it up. And it was just like little things. As soon as we got up to the map screen, where as I was scrolling from one end to the map to the other, it had that globe effect. And I know, for some people it's like, give me a fucking break. But, I actually ran into one of my friends who mentioned that he really enjoys Imperator Rome. And that was one of the first things that he actually mentioned, because I asked him, like, why do you like that game? And he says, actually one of the first things that really caught my eye was that globe effect. And then when you go down to the map, how gorgeous and textured that map is, how beautiful it is. And then when you mix all that paradox strategy awesomeness that they have in every single game with their character system, the character engine that they had in Crusader Kings that they kind of migrated over to this game, it just kind of like surpassed all my expectations. I just thought, honestly, when I started playing Imperator Rome, I was like, oh, this is pretty much just paint the world a single color kind of strategy game. With the paradox flavor though. With a little starburst kind of flavor in there. But as I was trying to take over the world, different countries, I noticed little shit. Like the first time I was going from Macedonia, I declared war against some no nonsense nation, right? And I was sending my dictator over there. And then the game popped up and said, "Hey, I noticed you go into war. Do you want your wife to kind of run the government?" I was like, "Okay, I guess, whatever. I don't give a shit." So I clicked yes. And then over the next couple of weeks, I've noticed that she was trying to convert the government to more of a religious fundamentalism. And then there were freaking things going on at home between my sons. One killed the other one and started shaking the stability of the government. I mean, while I was fighting armies in the field, I had to deal with shit that was going back out on home. And it was so engrossing and so immersive that I was just like, boom, right there, right then, top game of 2019. So that kind of won me over. And since,
Well, second.
well, yeah, well, top games, I meant. But yeah, so my top second game of 2019. And, since they released a multitude of updates and patches to address any concerns that people had before with bugs or anything like that. They changed out the population system. They enhanced basically every facet of the game. So from what I understand about the game now, with all these major updates, it's vastly improved from its original launch, which I thought at launch it was a great game. Now it's just so much better. So big props to Paradox for this. I really enjoy it, and it's definitely on my mind. Even though when I still don't play it as much as I should, it's still on my mind. I always think about it in my head while I'm at work. I'm like, fuck, I need to get me a game of Imperator going on, and I probably will soon start a new series on this. So yeah.
Well, Paradox makes great games in general. I think that I haven't given Imperator Rome a fair shake since it's pretty, well, I mean, a lot of people would say the pretty disastrous release. But yeah, definitely you'd have to give Paradox a lot of credit that they reacted to this. I don't think they expected it. I really don't think that. I'm pretty sure that they thought they were releasing a really top-notch game. And I think there's a little bit of market forces here, people basically voting with their dollar on Paradox DLC policy, which crept into the reviews of the game. Like that or not, I mean, whether you like it or not, I think that's a little bit of what was happening. So I would,
That mana.
yeah, that's some people had, gameplay related reasons to not like it, which I don't know. I don't really know if I dislike the mana concept or not, but it's all. I mean, we're playing a game, so a game's gonna have game mechanics. It's unavoidable. Anyway, I just want to say that I respect that as a pick. I don't think it would have been anybody's top. I don't think it should have been at least anybody's top pick when they first released. But, or maybe that's not even fair. Maybe some people, I think, John, you actually really enjoyed it right out of the box, even though a lot of other people, I mean, they did some bug squashing and some quick free DLC releases to get everyone aligned in a little bit more of a positive opinion. It seemed like that all worked out. I, again, haven't really tried it for the last 6 months. I've tried it maybe... I tried it when it first was released and then maybe once more like a month and a half later after release. And my opinion hadn't changed greatly between those two. But it's still a fun game to me. It's just not... To me, it's just part of the reason why maybe I don't have as high of an opinion of it is because I have such a high bar and very high opinion, very strong positive opinion of so many other Paradox games like Hearts of Iron. I love that series, and Europa Universalis. So even Vicky, I mean Victoria 2 is a great. They make such great games that I didn't find any of the same magic in Imperator Rome at launch.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's where we're disagreeing. I thought at launch the opposite, and I feel like ever since they released this game and all the, and honestly, one of the things that I was mentioning on my channel was that they released a 1.1 update and 1.2, and when you think of these like All right, well, it's a 1.2 update. How good is a 1.2 update? And then you go through the freaking feature list here, and I have the 1.2 Cicero update, and this thing freaking goes on and on and on. I mean, I'm still scrolling literally for like 10, 20
Well,
seconds.
John, I don't think that the number of items somebody puts on a change list. I mean, you can be as detailed as you want. You can start saying, "I corrected this line of code. I commented this line of code." Anybody. I think honestly, though, you're right. A lot of things were changed, but I wouldn't quote changelog.
You see here, like, and when I even talking like, I changed this line of code, it's like reworked experience. Unit experience no longer decays from losses in combat. Then reworked military traditions. Split cities into cities, settlements, metropolises. Settlement is a basic own territorial unit. I mean, added 11 new building types, added 5 new buildings for settlements. Fabricating claim is no longer instant. And then, you just on all republic laws reworked, all monarchy laws reworked, all tribal laws reworked. I mean, this is not a small little thing. This is like, if you're reworking an entire republic law, that shit is going to take, hundreds of lines of code. And that's just one thing right
But
there.
doing things to do things doesn't actually mean it's a good change, I think.
Well, I don't think they would just do it for the heck of it. They would do it to improve it.
But what that means is, if they felt the need to make all the changes that they made, then clearly, at launch, the game had problems.
I don't think the game had problems at launch. I think people's expectations of the game were I think what a lot of people wanted was for $40, they wanted a game that was as deluxe as like Crusader Kings 3 is today, right? Like they wanted a game that was as
Crusader Kings 3?
yeah,
Do
they
you have
wanted.
access to the game?
I mean,
Can you give
my
me
apologies. I'm
access to
sorry.
Crusader Kings 3, please?
Crusader
I wanna play
King, Crusader Kings
I
2.
wanna
I'm
play
sorry.
No, I mean we don't need to turn this into an argument about Imperator. Obviously,
Yeah, we talked
you
Imperator
thought
Rome too much
highly
this
about
year.
Imperator. I think I didn't hate it, but I wasn't on my list. But I certainly respect this decision of yours more than I respect.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I'm getting on Matt's good
That being
side.
I can't wait to hear Jean's number one, though. Speaking of
It's
number
like,
one,
is that damning with faint praise? It's like, well, this opinion is good. Your last one still sucked.
Oh,
Moving
man.
on to the number one.
You'd be a great guidance
game of
counselor.
2019. Well, let's shift this back over to Tortuga and see what his number one game of 2019 was.